of this session will be Tom Strickx, the principal network engineer at Cloudflare, where he's been operating and building their network for the last 6 years. Before that, he helped a variety of companies connect and stay connected to the internet. So please join me in welcoming Tom to the stage.
Thanks. I'm going to take a picture real quick so I can actually prove to my boss that I actually work from time to time. There we go. Awesome. So yeah, thanks for that introduction. I'm here to talk a bit about incident management at scale, or what that really means is incident management at Cloudflare, how we implement it, how we think about it, and hopefully teach some lessons here that some of you might be able to take away at your own companies or the own way that you handle incidents or that you deal with incidents. So, brief introduction, besides the introduction I already got, I guess, is like, who the hell am I and why am I here to talk about incidents? So my name is Tom, as said, principal network engineer at Cloudflare for the last 6 years. I'm also part of the very tiny backbone team. We've been building out the backbone over the last 4 years that now spans the globe. It's pretty neat, really fun to work with. Downside with that is it occasionally breaks on a semi-regular basis. I may or may not be responsible for that. But you know, it's mostly the issue is with that thing on the left there is the vendor and the hardware, and there's going to be a vendor present here today that might recognize that font and that specific color. So then the second part is why, right? Like, why are we talking about incident management? Well, we're all network operators, or most of us are network operators. We work for companies that are network operators. And we have this very annoying tendency of civilization is like expanding at a rapid rate, and we're building more and more things, and we're building all of these things on the internet, and then we fuck it up. It's great. But that means that, you know, more and more people, techies, non-techies, are relying on our services on a day-to-day basis. It's not just Cloudflare, right? It's like it's Microsoft is in there as well, Facebook is in there. And if my grandma can't check her Facebook, I get yelled at. I don't know why. So we need to be better, and we need to get really good at communicating to like external parties, external teams, but we also need to make sure that we do it properly internally, right? So let's talk a bit about incident management for us at Cloudflare. This is incident management at Cloudflare. Very accurate representation, right? It's like you go away for a Netnod meeting, and I'll come back to work tomorrow, and I'll see that everything's set on fire. So we need to figure out a process, right? It's like, how do you deal with everything's on fire, Pierce is bleeding from his leg, that kind of situation. So we need to figure something out. So some of you may know ETIL as a process. We don't use ETIL as a process because it doesn't map to the way that we think about incidents and responsibilities and ownership. Because that's the thing, right? With ETIL, if you know incident management defined by ETIL, it is you have a dedicated team that does the incident response. We don't think that's the right way of approaching this. We don't think that's the right way of thinking about it. We think that everyone needs to be involved, especially the team that owns the service should be the team that runs the incident. We have an incident commander, though. I've been told off for using WD-40 as the explanation, so I guess it's grease now. So they're the grease for the incident process, right? The reason, their sole reason for existing is making sure that everything works smoothly, right? They're not there for technical input. They're not there to, you know, like help resolve the incident itself. What they're trying to do, or what their task is making sure that the engineers that are working on the problem can get on with fixing the problem, right? Like everything else that's outside of it, it's like comms, it's making sure that the right team is in the right place, that the right teams have the right information, things like that. That's what the incident commander does. At Cloudflare, that means that all of the engineering managers are incident commanders. So we have a weekly rotation, so you're on call for 7 days during your normal working hours, so that's usually 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. That's your on-call. Like I said, like to follow the sun, because we have, fortunately, we're now a 3,500 headcount company, which is mad to think about. But that means we have people all over the globe, which makes follow the sun rotations a lot easier, right? Like you don't end up in a situation where the incident commander is awake at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. Because as we all know, we do our best work at 3 a.m. when you're sleep deprived without coffee, right? So that's the incident commander, and they're kind of there, like I said, to kind of grease the process, to make it move along, to make it glide along faster, make sure that everything's working as well as possible. So let's quickly, briefly kind of talk a bit about that process. We split the process really in three very distinct sets. First of all, you have detection. With detection, what we try to aim for is full coverage of everything that can go wrong to make sure that we have automated detection of what can go wrong. I think the worst situation to happen for most of us here is not when your like metric detection system indicates that, hey, you lost the link, or you're congesting or whatever else. No, it's your CEO yelling at you that they're getting yelled at Twitter because you broke something, right? It's like you don't want to use your customers as your detection system. That's usually that's the worst of the worst cases that we can happen. So we invest a lot in detection. We have an observability team that helps enable teams to make sure that they're providing the right tools, the right metrics to make sure that what we're looking at is the experience that the customer has of our network. We leverage tools as well, like RUM, which is real user measurements, as well as NEL, which is network error logging. Network error logging, for those of you that don't know what it is, it's a fairly new thing coming out of Google specifically. It's implemented in Google Chrome, but I think Firefox has support for it as well. And what it'll do is, if it can't contact a website, it will send a JSON blob of a bunch of information. It's like, oh yeah, it's like it was an HTTP2 connection error or a DNS resolution error. Basically, a base explanation of what the issue was, and it will send that to a separate endpoint. So that way, Cloudflare has very good visibility in the websites that enable that to make sure that if there's IP-based blocking happening, if there's DNS blocking happening, things like that, we get automatic reports, and it has been really, really helpful for us over the last couple of years. And then you have mitigation and remediation. It's very important to distinguish the two. Mitigation is fix the thing that's currently broken, where remediation is fix it properly, right? Like it's a tourniquet versus surgery and making sure that the actual bleeding is properly stopped. It's really important to make that distinction. And lastly, it's reporting, equally as important as the previous two steps. My company is nicknamed Blockflare for a reason. So, got to make up to the name. So detection, already kind of went through it, right? So really important to make sure that you have full visibility in your entire stack as much as possible. Use tools like RUM, use tools like NEL to make sure that you understand what's going on, the experience that your users are having on your network. Mitigation and remediation, like I said, really important to make those two, to keep those two separate, because sometimes, there's that saying of don't let perfect get in the way of good. That's this, right? Where we're good, it might just be, well, we need to disable this colo, right? We need to disable this POP. Customers are currently experiencing issues in, say, Copenhagen, say in Stockholm. We need to disable that POP right now, and then we can figure out really what's happening, when we can figure out what the real root cause is, and fix that root cause in earnest, in proper way, proper engineering method, to make sure that we get it right. But sometimes that might take days, that might take weeks. In situations like that, it's not acceptable to keep things broken until you get the right solution in place, right? So it's very important to kind of have that split, and having that split in mentality also means that it's a lot easier for us to implement those break-fix situations, right? Like it's a lot easier for people to accept that a Band-Aid is required if you understand that it's a temporary mitigation that's just being put in place for a week, for example, to kind of make sure that we don't get complaints from our customers, and then we'll fix it properly later. And then reporting, right? Really important aspect as well. One of the values that we really hold dear is transparency. Transparency is trying to make sure that whenever we have big issues, that we can communicate that properly and reasonably to our customers, to make sure that they fully understand what happened and what we put in place to make sure that it's not going to happen again. As well as internal, right? Internally, we write our incident reports to make sure that engineers that are new to the company, that might pop in, like 4 years, 5 years after an incident, that they can still read about that specific incident, that specific issue that we encountered, and can learn their own lessons from it, right? It's always valuable to get new eyes on old existing problems, because they might just have this thought. It's like, oh yeah, but that's an obvious fix for that. Why didn't you do that? And then you can have that conversation with someone new to make sure that, it's like, oh, we are doing the right thing. So to make reporting easier for us, we have a bot, and that bot is respect tables. Because whenever you flip a table, it will put the table back. It's very nice. So is respect tables, right? It does a vast, wide variety of tasks. It allows us to keep track of timelines during incidents, because timelines in incidents are really important. So instead of someone needing to take manual notes of like, oh yeah, we did this at that time, or we did this at that time, with respect tables, it's a lot easier for us to just mark these indicators of like specific tasks were done at this specific time. We just tag respect tables at it, and it will automatically keep a accurate timeline for us, so that we don't have to go like through logs, or we don't have to go through a chat, because we use Google Chat and it's dreadful. And then you don't want to go back through it like a day or 2 days later when you're writing that report. With respect tables, we just have all of that information in a single place already, so that's already done for us. It allows us to update the status. So the status is for internal use, specifically for our incident board. This took me a while to get that green thumbs up. We usually have at least 1 or 2 incidents active at any given time. Sometimes internal only, sometimes external facing. At which point we'll use a Cloudflare status page update. I'll go into that in the next slide. But the incident board is visible to all employees at Cloudflare. So that's kind of one of the first things I do whenever I wake up and it's like I start my morning, is check the incident board. Is just kind of having a look at like what's currently happening at the company, what's currently broken, is there something that I could help with, is there something that my team can help with. And one of the items there that you can maybe see is the last column, which is the last status comment. And that's what like respect tables allows us to do as well, is very quickly, very briefly just add an update on it's like this is what's currently happening, right? Like if you have a very long running incident, it's very important to kind of keep abreast of really what specific stage of the incident are you in right now, right? Like is everything still on fire, or have we actually put a mitigation in place, and are we just now waiting for that to kind of hit, or like are we waiting for confirmation, like things like that, right? It makes it a lot easier for people to keep on top of things, to make sure that they have the latest accurate information. So the status page, super important, right? Like I said, all of our customers, they care about the status of Cloudflare, especially they care about the status of Cloudflare in the city they're in, right? So that's why the status page will also include the status of each individual POP that we have, to make sure that customers can see if, if like Copenhagen is rerouted or Stockholm is rerouted. The thing with that is, though, is some of you might recognize that IP address. I don't blame you if you don't. But that's not a Cloudflare IP address. This is a Google IP address. Also, it wouldn't be a internet routing conference without reminding people, please RPKI, please sign your ROAs, please do route origin validation. Thank you, Google, for doing the right thing. But yeah, this is not hosted on Cloudflare infrastructure, because what if Cloudflare has a global outage and your status page is hosted on Cloudflare? Then people can't check what's going on, right? So it makes sense for us to host this as an entirely separate stack. We don't really, like, it's completely separate from us. There's nothing really tying it to Cloudflare, which means that if we're having a global outage, the status page will still work. And then last but not least is like, what do we do with these incident reports, right? Because like if you're just writing a report and you then just send it off to go into the abyss of just hell, there's very little value to it, right? Like, yeah, sure, it's nice for like technical or creative writing, and I guess that's a nice skill to have, and that's a nice skill to foster. But at one point or another, you also want to make sure that someone's actually reading it, right? Like actually learning something from it, actually doing something with it. So that's what we do with our incident reviews. So what we do is once a week in 2 time zones. We currently don't do it in Singapore. We might start doing it in Singapore, but right now we only do it in Europe and the US. We have enough overlap really to make that work, so that the APAC folks usually join either the morning one in Europe or the evening one in the US. Either works really. But we'll then review the incidents we've had that week, right? So what will happen is either the manager of the team that owns the incident, because we always have ownership It's really important. So we'll always have a manager that will be representative of his team. They'll quickly explain, it's like, okay, this is what happened, this is how we fixed it, and this is how we're going to make sure that it's never happening again, right? Those are the three very important things, is identifying truly, it's like, this is where we fucked up, this is how we unfucked the fuck up, and this is how we're going to make sure that the fuck up never fucks up again, right? That's basically the three important key differentiators during these incident review meetings. But one of the other things that we'll also definitely talk about is what could we have done better, right? It's making sure that we understand truly what we did during the incident and what could have done better, right? Sometimes that might have just been, well, it's like I didn't know which team to page because we have so many products. Sometimes you don't really know which team owns which product anymore. So one of that came up during an incident review. So we made a product ownership database to make sure that we can instantly tie every single product to a specific team to make sure that we fully understand who owns what so that we can escalate to the correct team appropriately. But that's a very important aspect, right? Is to make sure that it's not just, like roses and it's not, moonshine. It's actually also understanding, it's like, where's the thorns, right? It's like, it's understanding, it's like, is there something broken in our process? Is there something broken in our tooling? Like, did we even have visibility in this? Like I said earlier, with the detection part, you want to make sure that it's not your customers yelling at you. You want to make sure that it's an automated detected system. And if that's one of the things that comes up, is the first question that our SVP of product engineering will ask is like, how did we detect this? And why wasn't it done automatically, right? Because once you have automatic detection, you can also start building automatic remediation. So that's kind of how we think about incident response, incident remediation, and incident reporting. Like I said, Cloudflare, we will blog about very publicly noticeable incidents. That transparency, I think, is really important, and is something that some of us here might actually take some from, especially on the ISP side of things. It's not always the greatest thing when something breaks. You have an outage for 5-6 hours, and the only communication that you get from your provider is, we fixed it. It's like, okay, what broke? And then you don't get that response, or it takes like 2 weeks or 2 months or 3 years to get a response or a proper understanding of what's happening. So, you can be overly transparent, and I can fully understand and empathize from an ISP side of things. It's not always the greatest things to talk about the things that you fucked up. But we do appreciate that openness and that transparency. So that's it from my side. I kind of blazed through this. I think I have about 10 minutes left for questions. So any questions from the audience?
You have a question right at the front.
Thanks. How do you make sure that the remediations are prioritized by the product teams, and how do you deal with remediations that were never implemented?
So for remediations, the actual like long-term stuff, they get tied to the incident. So we use Jira as our like tracking tool. The incident, when we spin up an incident ticket gets created, and one of the relationships that we can add in Jira is prevented by. So whenever we have like long-term remediation steps that are being put in place, they are tied to an incident, and then we'll calculate an impact score. The impact score is dependent on the duration of the incident, how many customers were impacted, stuff like that. And that gets prioritized during quarterly planning. That's basically how we do it. And we have ownership of everyone. And if you don't fix your long-term remediation tickets, then you go to Jeremy jail, which basically means you're no longer allowed to push new things or new products to production. You need to fix existing issues. So that's like, we give the teams basically a week or 2 weeks of, hey, there's no more product pressure on you. There's no more new features, no nothing. The only thing you guys now need to work on for the next 2 weeks, please, is fix your shit. And that's been working wonders. It's really,
you
really
don't have
helped.
any pending remediations in the team's backlogs ever.
Any more questions for Tom? Okay. Yep, Dimitri.
Yeah, thanks. I love your approach. So you're saying basically your ops team can prioritize what the engineering team does if some of their products cause an outage, like the Quadan outage I was following up.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, How does it work from the executive perspective? I mean, I'm not saying like your VPs have a fight in the back room, but like,
No,
how
it's
did they
so
handle it?
we have a prod-eng team, which is that's a group I'm part of, right? And we have an engineering team and we have product teams, and there's a very clear understanding and agreement from leadership down that yes, we ship fast and we iterate very quickly, but sometimes you iterate too fast and things start breaking, right? And then we understand like, look, it's beneficial for everyone, not just the product team, but also product resilience, product everything, that we kind of slow down for like it's just a week, right? Like there's 52 of them in a year. You can still shove out new stuff at a very quick rate, but sometimes just kind of slow down, take a breather, understand where's some fundamental issues in our product, like Magic Transit not supporting IPv6, for example. What some are the fundamental issues, and let's deal with those fundamental issues and get a bit better, and then we can start shipping out new products again.
Thanks.
Any more questions for Tom? Okay. Well, please join me in thanking Tom for a fantastic presentation. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
folks.